Hey Campbell and Bullen Squad, what's up? So you know that this YouTube channel has a lot of Christian content on it, and don't worry, I'm still going to be very open about my faith. There's going to be a whole lot more Christian content on here, more sermons recorded, more I want to do Christian movie reviews on here. I want to read the Bible with you. I want to talk about Christian books, but I also want to do different kinds of content on here on this YouTube channel. And I do like murder mystery books and murder mystery movies. And so I saw a murder mystery movie called, some of you might know of a book that was also a play, and it's been turned into a mini series and a movie a couple of times, but it might have only been a movie once, I'm not really sure, but it's also been made into a mini series. But there was a book called "And Then There Were None," became a play, became a movie and a mini series, and then there was a movie made called 10 Murder Island. Well, first there was this book written called 10, and the writer of this book based the book 10 off of the book "And Then There Were None." And then Lifetime, which is it's a channel that makes TV movies. Like, the movies are only made for TV. I don't think you can find them on DVD anywhere, unfortunately. But there is an app called Tubi that's a free app. You just type in Tubi and you can download it, and you can watch movies for free on it. And so 10 Murder Island is on Tubi. So get the Tubi app, and 10 Murder Island is on Tubi. But Lifetime got rights. It got rights to make a TV movie of this book called 10 Murder Island. I don't know why they didn't just call it 10 like the book, but they called it 10 Murder Island. But anyways, so I got this book from the Urbandale Library. It is a murder mystery book, and I really like the movie, and so I thought something I could do is I could read chapters of this book with you, and eventually when we finish the book, I'll watch the movie again, and I'll do a movie review of the movie, and we'll see how closely the movie and book follow each other. At the beginning of this book, it says, "In loving memory of Doris Godinez Phillips." I have no idea who that is. And then it says, "And their doom comes swiftly." That probably has to do with what happens in the book. Alright, so let's get started here with chapter 1. Minnie's face was deathly pale. She stared straight ahead, eyes fixed on the back of the stained cloth seat, and bit her bottom lip so hard that Meg was afraid she would draw blood. She'd never seen Millie this seasick. "Minz, are you okay?" Minnie dug her fingernails into the seat cushion. "I'm fine. You're turning green." The ferry rolled to the left as a particularly large swell hit them from starboard, and Minnie clamped both hands over her mouth for one tenuous moment. Meg was convinced her best friend was going to hurl right there in the passenger cabin, but as the boat slowly righted itself, Minnie relaxed. "I'm fine," she repeated, lowering her hands. "Uh-huh." Meg rifled through her backpack and pulled out a plastic grocery bag, which Minnie absently took from her outstretched hand. "You don't think it'll be much longer, do you?" Meg leaned against the cushion and propped her feet up on the facing row of seats. "I think we're almost there." "Promise?" Meg sighed. "I can't promise when the ferry will arrive, Minz, but according to the schedule, we're almost there, okay?" "Fine," Minnie snapped. Meg recognized the sharpness in Minnie's voice. It usually signaled a rapid change in Minnie's mood, which happened all too frequently these days, especially when she stopped taking her antidepressants. Instead of asking about her meds, which would just lead to an argument, Meg tried to get Minnie to think about something else. Remember when your parents invited me to Friday Harbor, Meg said. It had been the summer before high school, the first time Meg had been invited on vacation with Minnie's family. A hint of a smile broke the corner of Minnie's mouth. You were so sick, right? You picked... Reading about this is kind of making me feel nauseous. You puked all over the bathroom in that ferry. Meg laughed. I thought your mom was going... I can't handle reading about puke. I thought your mom was going to throw me overboard. Me too, Minnie giggled. Not one of Meg's favorite memories, but maybe it would keep Minnie's mind off her churning stomach. And you weren't sick at all, so I'm sure you'll be fine till we get to Henry Island. Minnie shook her head, but that was summer, when the water's calm. Minnie gestured to the double-paned window. Not like this. Good point. Meg gazed outside. The rain had died down for the moment. Erratic water trails no longer zipped diagonally across the pane. But the wind, if anything, had intensified. It held past the cabin, whipping from ahead, then slamming into the sides of the ferry with a force that seemed almost supernatural. Minnie leaned her head against Meg's shoulder. Maybe we shouldn't have come. Meg couldn't suppress a laugh. It's a bit late for that. I know, but what? This party is all you've talked about since we got the invites on Tuesday. I haven't seen you this excited about anything since your dad gave you an Amex card for your birthday. Minnie sat up straight. Jessica Lawrence invited us to her house party. That's not an invitation you turned down, but... She sighed deeply. I don't know. It's not like we're friends. You used to be, Meg said without thinking. Well, that was before. Minnie stopped herself, but Meg knew she was going to say, before you. That was a long time ago, Minnie said instead. The unspoken words hung in the air like stale cigarette smoke. Meg had been the reason for Minnie's fall from grace in the greater Seattle junior high social scene. They both knew it, but it was a touchy subject. And one they rarely discussed. Minnie turned her head to the window and stared out into the darkening afternoon, and Meg instantly regretted even alluding to her friend's former closeness with Jessica. To distract herself, Meg pulled a copy of the Facebook invite out of her backpack and read it over for the bazillionth time. Shh, don't spread the word. What? Epic house party. When? President's Day weekend. Where? White Rock House on Henry Island. Why? Because if you miss this party, you'll regret it forever. Fully stocked house, all to ourselves for 3 days, like spring break in February. We've got special ferries set up and everything. But keep it quiet. We don't want just anybody showing up. Can't wait to see you there, Jess. Meg never felt comfortable at those kinds of parties. Most of the time she just wanted to disappear into the wallpaper and pray that no one noticed her. But Minnie had been so excited. It was like an olive branch from the popular crowd. Meg couldn't say no. With any luck, she could find some quiet time alone, maybe wander the beaches by herself, find an isolated spot with her journal or her laptop and get some writing done. A gust blasted the side of the ferry, rattling the cabin window. Meg sighed, or maybe right in an isolated spot indoors, like a broom closet or something. Stupid storm. Hey, I don't want you spending the whole weekend in front of your laptop, Minnie said from out of the blue. Meg stared. Was she really that predictable? Okay. The plastic bag rustled as Minnie tightened her grip. You're going to have fun this weekend if it kills me. Meg bit her lip. I have plenty of fun. You're kidding, right? Now it was Meg's turn to be annoyed. Minz, what are you talking about? Minnie said dramatically. You used to be fun, remember? We'd do crazy stuff. Now you're like... Meg shifted in her seat. Like what? Like boring. I'm not boring, Minnie snorted. Besides, we could have had fun at home, and not, lied to our parents and gone to a house party on an island in the middle of nowhere. Minnie threw up her hands. It's not the middle of nowhere. Half of Seattle has summer homes on the San Juan Islands, and we were not going to tell our parents. Minnie finished with an unempathetic nod of her head. Especially not after that body was found in Everett this morning. Daddy would never have let me go. Meg shuddered. She'd seen the report of the news. She'd seen the report of the news, the charred remains of a body found in the locker room of their rival school, Mariner High. It was a gruesome murder, and so far the body hadn't been identified. The last thing I need this weekend, Minnie continued, is Daddy dropping in to check up on me. That would ruin everything. Yeah, I guess you're right. Despite the remoteness of the island, Meg couldn't help but agree that Minnie's dad showing up at the party wasn't out of the realm of possibility. Minnie placed her hand over Meg's and squeezed. Look, we're going to have fun this weekend. We need it, okay? Meg forced a smile. Minnie was right. There had been such a strain between them the last few months. First, Meg's acceptance at UCLA, which Minnie interpreted as Meg abandoning her, then Minnie's struggles with her new medications, and of course the homecoming night debacle. Stop it, Meg said to herself. She needed to put that night out of her mind. It was over and done, and in a few months she'd never see him again anyway. Without warning, the dull roar of the engines diminished, and Meg felt Without warning, the dull roar of the engines diminished, and Meg felt the ferry slow. A second later, a scruffy-faced deckhand in an orange rain slicker shoved his head inside the cabin. Henry Island, we'll be docked in a few. Minnie sprang to her feet. Finally, she pulled her overnight wheelie and two small shoulder bags out of the luggage bin, then drew on her coat, glancing over her shoulder as she bounded out on deck. Try to remember this is a party. Party equals fun. Meg sighed. Party equals fun? Woohoo! Yay! Party. With a deep breath, Meg shouldered her backpack and followed Minnie out on deck. Chapter 2. The air was damp with the kind of cold meatiness that signaled the approach of another storm. Wind whipped at Meg's hair, loosening strands from her ponytail. She tucked a few of them behind her ear as her eyes adjusted to the dusk. Dull lights glowed in the distance across the bay. Roach Harbor on the backside of San Juan Island. It looked closer than she'd imagined, and it was comforting to know that a decently populated town was just across the bay. Meg shook her head. Why was she so skittish? She needed to loosen up. Secret house party hosted by the most popular girl in school. People would kill for an invite. So what if her parents didn't know she was? So what if her parents didn't know where she was? That was the fun of it, right? Minnie stood beside the scruffy-faced deckhand staring down the side of the ferry as it bobbed up and down in the water. We have to climb down, she asked. Sorry, miss. Weather's too rough, he said. Gotta use the ladder. Minnie glanced at her wholly inappropriate kitten heel slingbacks. But, just take them off, Meg said, trying to keep the I told you so tone out of her voice. Don't worry, miss. The deckhand nodded down to his mate on the dock. Branson'll catch you if you fall. Minnie leaned over the rail and looked down at Branson, the portly middle-aged crewman. Her eyes grew wide and she turned to Meg. How? You'll be fine, Meg said. I promise. It was what Minnie needed to hear, even if it wasn't true. Minnie sighed and slid out of her heels, leaving them on the deck, and purposefully climbed over the side of the boat. Okay, if you promise. Meg shook her head as Minnie disappeared over the side, then picked up the discarded heels and shoved them in her backpack. This was why she was going away to college. She needed for once in her life to put herself first. Meg watched the deckhand nonchalantly toss their luggage overboard with the kind of disinterested yet fluid motion that signaled a well-known routine. Branson caught each bag with the same easy flow, depositing it on the deck and swinging around just in time to catch the next one. There was something simultaneously cool and creepy about their unspoken luggage dance, fascinating in its choreography and yet ever so slightly disturbing in the mindless, drone-like way in which it was executed. Your turn, miss, the deckhand said, snapping Meg from her thoughts. All right. She swung herself onto the ladder. As she started to climb down the boat heaved, and the deckhand grabbed Meg's arm, and the deckhand grabbed Meg's arm to steady her. Thanks, she said, clutching the top rung of the ladder with both hands. You sure you'll be okay? He asked. His hand still gripped her arm. Yeah, short ladder. I'll be fine. He cocked his head. No, on the island. Meg squinted up at his worn-lined face. Yeah, why not? The deckhand paused, then craned his neck to look over toward the northern part of the island. Nothing, he said at last. Okay. The ferry's engines fired up again as Meg climbed down the side. We'll be back Monday to pick you up, the deckhand shouted just as her feet touched the dock. Be careful. Be careful. It was a weekend party full of hookups and beer bongs. Other than mono and dehydration, what did she need to be careful of? Weirder and weirder. As soon as Meg was clear of the ladder, Branson untied the line and without a word, scrambled up the side of the boat. Meg watched wistfully as he swung his body onto the pitching deck and disappeared behind the bulwark as the boat eased away from the island. She half wished she could join them. Now what? Minnie said. She stood barefoot, twirling a strand of her white blonde hair. Now what? Minnie said. She stood barefoot, twirling a strand of her white blonde hair. Good question. Meg reluctantly pulled her attention away from the departing ferry and scanned the dock. It was a rough, weather-beaten construction that jutted 50 yards out from the beach. Broken planks of moldering wood dotted the path to shore like little landmines, and the swells of water, even in the protected bay, seemed dangerously close to swamping the decaying pier. On shore, a forest of Douglas firs towered above the beach, silhouetted against the gray clouds that crowded the darkening sky. Meg thought she caught a glimpse of lights beyond the fringe of trees, but she wasn't quite sure. She couldn't see much in the gathering dusk, and with the moon and stars obscured by storm clouds, it was about to get extremely dark on Henry Island. As the sound of the ferry's engines faded into the distance, Meg felt suddenly isolated. Other than the dull rumble of water and wind, she couldn't hear a thing, and there were no signs of life on the distant beach. Meg shivered. They were alone in the middle of nowhere, their only contact with the outside world retreating into the night. Meg yanked her cell phone out of her jeans pocket. She desperately wanted to call someone, anyone, and tell them where they were. What are you doing? Minnie asked. Meg sheltered the screen of her phone from the ocean spray. Nothing. Just wanted to see if we had a signal. Do not call your parents. I'm not, Meg lied. Not that it mattered. She spun around, waving her phone slowly back and forth. The result was the same. There's no signal anyway. Good. Minnie snatched the phone out of her hand and shoved it in Meg's backpack, retrieving her shoes in the process. She grinned and linked her arm through Meg's. It's more fun this way, like we're stranded for 3 glorious days. Glorious was not the word that immediately sprang into Meg's mind. Sure, Mins, whatever you... Hello down there. Meg and Minnie turned sharply. 2 figures appeared at the end of the dock, moving quickly toward them. Both were tall and wrapped up in heavy coats. In the muted light, Meg couldn't see their faces, but one of them seemed oddly familiar. Meg? Meg's stomach lurched. She knew that voice. Minnie recognized it at the same time. She clapped her hands and squealed. Oh, OMG! Meg felt all the warmth drain from her body. It was T.J. Fletcher. Chapter 3. It had been months since Meg and TJ had spoken a word to each other, not since homecoming. They didn't have any classes together that semester, and since Minnie had broken up with TJ's best friend, they never saw since Minnie had broken up with TJ's best friend, they never saw each other. Their friendship was over. Not that everyone and their mom didn't know every detail of TJ. Not that everyone and their mom didn't know every detail of TJ's life. Meg had heard the rumors, the football scholarship to UW, the string of girlfriends, the wild parties. Many talked about him incessantly, obsessively. Although that part was normal, she'd been in love with TJ since freshman year, even going so far as to date his best friend Gunnar after TJ rejected her. So in the weeks after homecoming, when merely hearing his name made Meg cringe, she had to listen to Minnie go on and on about how amazing he was. Minnie had no idea that Meg was in love with him too. Minnie had no idea that Meg was in love with him too, which is why Meg needed to control herself, keep her emotions in check. One look at TJ's smiling face, his gorgeous dark brown skin, and prominent dimples, and it would be like one of those cartoon moments where the French skunk's heart pounds so fiercely it literally leaps out of his chest for everyone to see. She couldn't let that happen. No one could know how she really felt. Not many, and especially not TJ. Glad you made it, TJ yelled as he strode down the dock. Meg tried and failed to prevent the hot flush from creeping to her face. She prayed Minnie didn't notice. He doesn't like you, she told herself. He's still mad at you. Luckily, Minnie only had eyes for TJ. Luckily, Minnie only had eyes for TJ. TJ, she squealed. She patted toward him and she patted toward him a sling bag dangling from each hand. We didn't know you'd be here. No, they didn't, because there was no way in. No, they didn't, because there was no way in heck Meg would have come if she'd known TJ was on the guest list. The second figure followed TJ down the dock. At first, Meg thought it was Gunnar, but the figure was too tall, too lanky, someone new. I was afraid you guys had missed the ferry, TJ said, slightly out of breath. He wore a beanie cap pulled down low over his ears, covering his closely shaved head, and a peacock buttoned up to his chin. You knew we were coming. Minnie threw her hands, shoes and all, around his neck and practically launched herself into his arms. TJ gave Minnie a combination brosive chest bump and back pound, then sidestepped her entirely and moved to Meg's side. Of course I knew you'd be here. Meg's heart thumped so loudly she was convinced everyone within a 2-mile radius could hear it. She dropped her eyes to the warped wooden dock to hide her confusion. Yeah, she said. You too. Hi. The other guy stood right behind them. You must be Minnie. He was just as tall as TJ, but thin and live, where TJ was muscular and athletic. His vivid blue eyes sparkled as he grinned at Minnie, the ends just crinkling by his temples, which gave his face a puppyish expression. More striking, he had a shock of hair. He had a shock of hair almost as white blonde as Minnie's, blonde and blonder. Minnie cocked her head. How did you know who I was? I heard you'd be the pretty blonde one. Blondie winked. Blondie winked. Meg desperately fought the urge to roll her eyes at the nacho cheesiness of his line, but it was like crack for Minnie. Oh, Minnie. Oh, Minnie. Oh, Minnie cooed. She glanced at TJ. Did you tell him that? TJ's eyes darted to the retreating ferry. Is it just the two of you? Is it just the two of you? He said, changing the subject. Yep, Meg said. Were you expecting someone else? TJ shook his head. We got a call from Mr. Lawrence earlier saying Jessica was going to try to make the last ferry. Apparently she and a bunch of friends got stuck at some school thing today, so they'll join us tomorrow. Cheerleading, Blondie piped in. Last minute practice. Now he had Minnie's full attention. You're friends with Jessica? He said, flashing a boyish smile. Something like that. So Blondie was Jessica's new boy toy. Interesting. So Blondie was Jessica's new boy toy. Interesting. Sorry, TJ said, slapping Blondie on the back. I should have introduced you. This is Ben. No worries, dude. Ben's blue eyes landed on Meg. There was something kind of easy and comfortable about him that she immediately liked. You must be Meg. Yep, Meg said. Yep, Meg said. She shifted her feet, suddenly conscious that a house full of strangers must have been discussing her if Ben knew who both she and Minnie were. M&M, Ben laughed. That's adorable. Minnie grabbed Meg's hand, her attention fixed on Ben. Besties since we met in the 7th grade. Ben continued to smile at Minnie. Can I carry your bags? He asked. Oh, Minnie said, glancing at TJ. A gentleman. TJ ignored her, and while Ben shouldered Minnie's bags, TJ gently tugged on the sleeve of Meg's coat. This way. TJ hurried down the dock, his long strides putting easy distance between them and Minnie and Ben. Meg scrambled to keep up with him. Part of her wanted to stay behind with Minnie, avoiding alone time with TJ at all costs. But there was something else spurring her on. At that moment when she saw TJ smile at her, Meg realized how much she'd missed him. They walked in silence, though Meg's mind raced. Should she say something, bring up what happened on homecoming night, try to explain why she bailed on him and beg forgiveness? She wanted to desperately, but instead she didn't say a word, as usual. She wished it was September and she was already at college in LA, away from all this, from everyone who knew her. Somewhere she could start over and not feel like such an awkward spaz all the time. TJ trudged steadily in front of her. As they approached the tree line, she caught their familiar scent, all piney and Christmassy over the briny sea air and the stench of rotten seaweed wafting up from the beach. Meg took a deep breath. Those two smells, Christmas and the salty sea, were what home smelled like. The dock itself extended well onto the island and disappeared into the trees, but instead of following it, TJ deftly leaped down to the beach. He turned to help her just as Meg jumped into the sand. Her momentum pushed her forward into TJ, who put his hands on her waist to brace her. They stood there in the wet sand for a moment. TJ's hands never left her waist. It felt so comfortable, and to be that close to him again, as if there had never been a rift between them. She'd missed him so much. Minnie's high-pitched giggle rang over as she and Ben approached the end of the dock. Meg shook herself, then broke free from TJ's embrace and hurried across the tightly packed sand. You have to get over him. She paused halfway down the beach. Through the trees, a house was visible. It seemed as if every light in the 2-story vacation home was on, and Meg could hear laughter and music which swelled and ebbed on the wind. They've been partying since the sun went down, said TJ at her shoulder. That's not White Rock House, Meg. That's not White Rock House, Meg gasped. TJ shook his head. The Taylors live there. Lawrence Point is at the tip of the island. How do you know? I've been here a few times, TJ said with a shrug. Oh, duh, Meg, when he was dating Jessica's best friend. It's kind of nice, TJ barreled on, to know there's another party happening nearby, don't you think? I guess. Actually, it was nice. Somehow, knowing that the house full of people was close by put some of her nervousness at ease. Come on, TJ nudged her and Meg followed him past the house. The trees thinned and a narrow strip of island lay ahead, illuminated by the soft orange glow of the Taylor's interior lights. The isthmus protruded from the main island, maybe 20 feet wide and barely 4 feet above the waterline, with Lawrence Point looming in the distance. The blanched carcasses of dozens of stripped tree trunks littered the isthmus like a giant game of pickup sticks, a severed strip of land besieged on all sides by hostile sea. Meg felt as if she'd reached the end of the world. A giant wave crashed onto the eastern shore, completely washing over the tiny land bridge. Meg's eyes grew wide. We have to cross that? Yeah, there's a path down the middle. TJ pointed into the semi-darkness. Meg didn't see anything first until the receding waves exposed what looked like a rickety hand railing. Is that a bridge? Kinda, TJ said. More like a raised platform, a footbridge to keep you above the water. Another wave washed over the isthmus fiercer this time, and Meg and TJ had to retreat several steps to keep from getting wet. The wave submerged the footbridge completely, leaving only a few inches of the handrail visible above the churning surf. The water retreated grudgingly, playfully, as it withdrew to either side of the isthmus, taunting them almost to test their luck. There's no other way to get to the house. Nope, TJ said, but it's not too bad. We all made a break for it between waves. Easy when you could actually see them. TJ shoved his hands deep into the pockets of his coat. His face was serious, the dancing smile and dimples gone. Are you being hostile on purpose? She faltered. I didn't realize. Yes, you did. I know you, Meg Pritchard. You don't say anything unless you mean it. Meg winced. That was true. The flip side being that she didn't say half of what she wanted to. Look, TJ said in the face of Meg's silence, I just don't want this weekend to be awkward for either of us. We used to be friends, remember? We used to have fun. There was that word again. Fun. Had she really lost that stride of her? Had she really lost that side of her? No, she was sure she could be that girl again, the girl that laughed and joked with the one guy on the planet with whom she felt she could be completely herself. We are friends, she said. We are friends, she said, and we'll have fun this weekend. I promise, even if I die trying. TJ arched his brow. Yeah. Meg eyed the footbridge. The white foam of a retreating wave sparkled in the dim light. The timing was perfect. A grin stole across her face. Yeah, starting now. She spun on her heel and took off running across the isthmus. Chapter 4. I'll read chapter 4 and then we'll stop and I'll read more chapters with you hopefully tomorrow. If I read more chapters of this book tomorrow, I'm actually posting this video and the video where I read more chapters of this book on the same day, so both videos where I'm reading from this book will be posted on the same day. Chapter 4. Meg's backpack thumped against her hip as she ran. She didn't even look at the ocean to see if a rogue wave might be gathering to wash her out to sea. She honestly didn't care. She was so elated TJ still wanted to be friends with her that death at the hands of a merciless current seemed a small price to pay. He hadn't spoken to her since homecoming. The whole thing had been a perfect storm of not awesome. The image of Minnie's face when she'd confronted Meg was imprinted on her brain. Eyes rimmed red from crying, mascara running in jagged black trails down her face, sunken cheeks, pinched jaw. We're going to homecoming with TJ? Minnie had flown into a crying rage. She grabbed Meg's shoulders so fiercely she left 5 pointed bruises on each side. You're going to homecoming with TJ? She spat the words out, her fingernails digging through the thin cotton of Meg's t-shirt and her eyes dashing back and forth across Meg's face. This wasn't her friend. This wasn't the person she'd known for years. She'd been replaced by someone irrational and crazy. It was one of the scariest things Meg had ever seen. She'd been determined to tell Minnie the truth, but there in the moment, confronted with Minnie's pain, she just couldn't do it. Their friendship was more important to her than a boy. No, of course not. Why would he want to go with me? Then she'd texted TJ to say she couldn't go. Not even a call. It was the coward's way out, but she knew if she faced him in person, her resolve would crumble. And that was that. Meg forced the painful memory from her mind as she reached the far side of the isthmus where the footbridge gave way to a sturdy outcropping of rock. The point rose before her, tall and massive and slightly out of place. Stone steps led up from the beach, hewn into the stark granite of the island. Each step was polished, flat and smooth, probably more a result of the elements than of foot traffic. Meg guessed as she hurried up them, and Meg get probably more a result of the elements than of foot traffic. Meg guessed as she hurried up them and cut a gray path up the side of the forested hill. Meg, slow down. TJ hustled up the steps behind her. What? What? Can't catch me, Mr. Football? Meg said with a laugh. She was surprised how easy it was to slip back into flirt mode with TJ like she'd never left it. She bolted the last few steps and emerged in a clearing at the top of the hill, TJ right on her heels. Dang, you're fast, he panted. Didn't think a rider would have that in her. Har har, Meg said, wrinkling her nose. She couldn't keep from smiling, though. Heck of a climb, TJ pointed behind Meg, but worth it, don't you think? Meg turned and caught her breath. White Rock House rose before them, a cross between a lighthouse and a Creole mansion. It stood like a shining whitewashed beacon in the middle of nowhere. A covered patio with a wrought iron balustrade stretched across the front entrance and disappeared around the eastern corner, and the peaked gables on both the second and third floors hunched forward over the windows, guarding them perhaps from the onslaught of Mother Nature. A huge 4-story tower emerged from the middle of the house, looking like it didn't actually belong to the gabbled facade at all. Gabbled facade at all. Meg's eye caught something glistening on the side of the house. She squinted and realized the entire ground floor was covered with a pleak of shimmering white stones. At least White Rock House lived up to its name. Beyond the house, the graduated tree line fell off steeply in all directions. The house had been built like a medieval castle in a strategic position to protect it from attacking Huns. It was definitely the most secluded, least accessible place she'd ever been, and despite the brilliant white rocks and a sparkling light blazing forth from every window, Meg couldn't help but think the house looked lonely on that point, cut off from the rest of the world. It takes a certain kind of person to build that house way the heck out here, right? TJ said. You really have to stop verbalizing what's in my head, Meg said with a half smile. It's getting creepy. Oh yeah? TJ beamed as if being told he was a potential creeper was the greatest compliment Meg could have paid him. It's kind of cool, the communion with the elements, Ben said. He deposited Minnie's bags on the grass, then reached his hand back and helped Minnie up the last of the steps. Don't you think? Yeah, Minnie said, making a concerted effort not to pant as she finished the climb. Elements, totally. Her pale face was pink with the physical effort of climbing the stairs, and she looked as if she might go into cardiac arrest at any moment. TJ nudged Meg in the ribs, and she had to stare at the ground to keep from laughing. A gust of wind ripped through the clearing, and every tree on the island seemed to spring to life. We should get inside, TJ said. Looks like it's about to start raging again. TJ led the way across the waterlogged front lawn to the wraparound patio. He marched up to the gleaming white door and threw it open. We're back! They stood in a foyer that extended from the main part of the house, almost as if it had been added as an afterthought. Before them, a hallway opened up to a massive staircase. The ceiling slanted upward to a point under one of the house's many gables, and the walls were bare and white except for a row of coat pegs holding a couple of neon yellow rain slickers on one wall and a low entry table against the other. Dude, another familiar voice called from the hallway, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. Did Jessica and the girls get? Gunner Shields appeared in the doorway. He had one of Meg's favorite, most unfortunate name combinations of all time, and it made her giggle inside every time she thought of it. Despite the fact that it was February in Seattle, Gunner sported a deep tan and his sun-streaked locks flopped down over each ear. He wore his usual uniform: North Shore t-shirt, baggy jeans, flip-flops. For Gunner, every day was surf's up. Even under his fox tan, Meg noticed the color rise in his face when he saw Minnie. "Hey," he mumbled. Minnie leaned heavily on Ben's arm and smiled. Hello, Gun Show. I didn't know you'd be here this weekend." Gunner looked furtively over his shoulder. "Yeah, well," he stammered. "No, Jessica?" TJ piped in, No, Jessica," TJ piped in, saving his friend from embarrassment. "Guess we'll have to wait till morning." "Dude," Gunner said with a nod at Ben. "Sucks for you." Ben glanced at Minnie. "I'll survive." Minnie giggled and tightened her grip on Ben's arm. "Oh boy, going after the hostess's boyfriend was probably not the best idea Minnie had that day." "Babe," a short Asian girl slipped up behind Gunner. She was a punkish pixie in a black t-shirt and striped arm warmers with a fat streak of magenta hair sweeping over her eyes. "I need your help in the kitchen." Meg saw Minnie stiffen as Gunner and magenta hair disappeared around the corner. TJ must have seen it too. "This way." He started up the stairs. "Let me show you to your room, and then you can meet everybody else." Meg was relieved as she followed TJ up a narrow staircase. So Gunner had a new girlfriend. Good. She'd always liked his sort of good-natured doofiness, and he had worshipped Minnie, which always gave Meg a twinge of guilt since she knew her friend didn't really care about him. She was glad he'd moved on. Without thinking, her eyes drifted to TJ. Why couldn't she move on too? That flirty closeness they'd experienced as they were climbing up to the house. It was the first moment of real happiness Meg had felt since the homecoming disaster. But she had to get over him. She had to get over him. He had to. He was a player. As Minnie brought up repeatedly, they were going to college 1,000 miles apart, and her best friend was in love with him. 3 strikes. She had to move on. TJ caught her staring at him and smiled. "I think you'll like your room." How was she supposed to get over him when he kept smiling at her like that? "You're playing host now? You're playing host in it? You're playing host now," Minnie said. Meg thought she caught an edge to her voice. "Nah," Ben said. When we got here, the front door was unlocked and there was a note on the table that said, 'Make yourselves at home.' So we did." TJ nodded. "There's Wi-Fi and satellite, even an Xbox." "Oh. And the fridge is fully stocked. Food, juice, beer." "There's beer?" Minnie said. Meg shook her head. Just what she needed. Drunk Minnie was a hot mess. She tended to get a little mean, and the booze inevitably led to laughter, falling down, making out, screaming jags, fistfights, and tears usually, but not always in that order. Calm down, Frank the Tank," Meg said. "Let's at least put our stuff away before you start shotgunning brewskis." Minnie ignored her. "Where are we going?" "TJ saved this room for you guys." Ben pointed up the stairs to the top of the tower. "He thought you'd like it." Meg stole a glance at TJ as they rounded the staircase. It was hard to tell with his dark skin, but was his face but was his face ever so slightly pink? The staircase narrowed and hugged all four walls as it would its way upward around the square tower. There were bare windows that let in enough light to illuminate the entire tower, including the stairs as they disappeared through the ceiling. Meg followed TJ up and emerged into a garret. It was a small room. Meg followed TJ up and emerged into a garret. It was a small room, plainly furnished with two twin beds, an easy chair, a dresser, and a full-length mirror. But the real selling point for Meg was the enormous row of windows on each of its four walls. She could see the lights of Roach Harbor across the bay, dim and muted through the low fog, and through another window the dancing glow of the tailor's house. Meg couldn't wait until morning. The views would be stunning. "We have to sleep up here," Minnie said, looking around. "There isn't even a bath." "We have to sleep up here," Minnie said, looking around. "There isn't even a bathroom." "It's down on the second floor," TJ said. "I'm sure we can move you if you hate it. We'll probably have to refigure the sleeping arrangements when Jessica and the others come tomorrow anyway." "Nope, we're good," Meg said. "But," Minnie started. Meg didn't let her finish. "We're good." It was the kind of room she'd always dreamed of staying in as a child, like a turret in a castle. She could picture herself up there, tucked away from the rest of the party, writing on her laptop or in her journal. It was perfect, and she wasn't going to let Minnie mess it up. Minnie plopped down on the bed nearest the stairs. "Fine. Come down when you're ready," TJ said as he disappeared down the stairs behind Ben. "We're making dinner." Okay, so next time we'll be starting with chapter 5. And I know I said this was a murder mystery book, and I know this book does not seem too interesting yet, but I promise I've never actually read the book of the movie. I've never read this book before. I've only seen the movie that is based off of the book, but I promise you, so far it's sticking pretty close to the movie. I promise you, it gets, even though it doesn't seem too interesting yet, it gets better. It gets more interesting. It is starting off kind of slowly, like the movie does. But I promise you, this is a murder mystery book, even though it may not seem like it yet. I mean, even look at what this says right here: 10 teens, 3 days, 1 killer. See? 10 teens, 3 days, 1 killer. Where did I put my bookmark? Okay. Here. Alright. Now I have a bookmark. This little piece of cardboard. Right, so, there's the bookmark, and there's how much of the book we have left to read. So, get comfortable with this book, because we're going to be reading it for a while. There were a few words in the book I didn't really like, but obviously I replaced those with slang words for the curse words, like when I said heck when reading this book, it said the other H word, but I don't use that kind of language. When I said dang when reading the book, they used a different word, and like I said, I don't use that kind of language. But aside from the language, I think the book's living up to my expectations. So I'll see you guys in the next video, and I look forward to reading more of this book with you all.